Okay, so this is just a short presentation on the vinyl revival and why we are so obsessed with it. So, some keywords that I have here is vinyl, nostalgia, culture, pop culture, technology, media, marketing, and retro culture. Okay, so in the news recently, you would have seen that this year saw the release of Adele's long-awaited new album, and this has been, reported that this has caused a bit of a stir in the manufacturing side of things. There was an order of 500,000 vinyl records which were to be made, thus causing a manufacturing delay across the industries. What it means now is many artists could actually be waiting anything up to 9 months for physical copy. And the value of vinyl sales has completely overtaken CD sales for the first time since 1986. All of this detailed there does align with the popular vinyl record revival in 2021. So just having a wee look at the top vinyl albums of 2021. Now, number 10 was Amy Winehouse, Back to Black. Released over a decade ago, but it's still a very prominent album. Then we had Taylor Swift's version of Red. Also, Queen's Greatest Hits as well. And Oasis live at Nebworth in 1996. Also, Nirvana, Nevermind. Neil Young and Crazy Horse and Barn. Fleetwood Mac Rumours. Ed Sheeran, Divide. Paul Weller and Orchestrated Songbook. And topping the charts there is Adele with 30. Now, as you can see, there's a vast, choice there in terms of you've got right up to bang up to date, like Adele, Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift, then moving back a further, few years into Amy Winehouse, Paul Weller, then going back to the 90s with the likes of Oasis and Nevermind, then further back to Neil Young, Queen and Fleetwood Mac, all the same sort of era and what we would call heritage acts. So as you can see, it's not just new vinyl that people are buying. A lot of people are investing in the older product. Also, you can click on any of these images and it will take you to a YouTube link of the album. Also, some facts and figures. There were 19.2 million vinyls sold in the USA within the first half of 2021. Also, over 1 million units were sold within the first quarter of 2021 in the UK. And in 2020, the global vinyl market was valued at 1.3 billion. And in USA, sales have increased by 94% in 2021 with a total of $467 million revenue. But what are the reasons for this? Here's just a short little film for you, if you want to watch that, and it will explain a bit more about it.
Right now, we've got a situation where music is actually being bought again by people.
Everybody's buying records, and that's both sexes and all ages.
Sweet, sweet sugar. To hold the physical record and the album art is such a beautiful thing. We've never had that much of a demand for people to sign records and stuff like that.
It's kids, it's teenagers buying records as much as it's 50-somethings. There's an idea of wanting to opt out of a digital culture and have something real.
Vinyl goes with a record player, and the record player is located in a space. It's almost like an altar.
It keeps going and going and going. You just think it's going to plateau and stop, but it hasn't.
We've got 5 minutes to reopen. Feeling alright, very excited. Just excited to make With Spotify and all the other streaming services, you don't really get to have that physical product.
The problem for vinyl right now is supply and demand. There's a waiting list at some points in the year of 4 to 6 months.
If you're a real music fan, there's nothing better than being able to connect with that piece of music, to see it, to feel it, to hold it, to love it.
All of our bands come out on vinyl. We barely do CDs.
Vinyl is the preferred choice. CD, much less so now. In the last year alone, I've visited more than 40 new record shops, many of them owned by young people excited by the vinyl revival. The appeal of that format, of the vinyl format, I don't think it's ever truly gone away.
It's the equivalent of whether you just have a tea bag or whether you have the Japanese tea ceremony. And for me, the Japanese tea ceremony is the right way to approach music.
And so if you look at a record store, there's so much more in a record store, so much more of cultural richness that you just can't get at a Walmart.
Music business in the UK increased by 9% last year, and vinyl went up on a year-on-year by 26%. Brilliant. To come back to this point is Lazarus-like, really, for an industry that should have been, effectively stuck on Amazon.
So that's just a short trailer for the Vinyl Revival film, which is available on YouTube, and you can just click the link below. Okay, so the Vinyl Revival can be underpinned by 3 main arguments or themes. So the first one I'm going to look at is retro culture and nostalgia. So the piece of literature that I looked at for this was Simon Reynolds' Retromania, along many other things. But the idea that retro is actually created by mass culture and personal memories, and is actually a byproduct of this, needs to be explored further, which we do further in the presentation. So Reynolds believes that the idea of retro and vintage is more of a middle class notion, but also believes that these things, whether it's music, clothing, artefacts, interior, or whatever, becomes more appealing when they are no longer trying to sell you something. He supports this argument by stating that as time passes, they no longer become commercially viable, in the current landscape that actually makes them more desirable. And it seems that this is the same with music. He takes the stance that we somehow have reached a pop cultural plateau, which is possibly caused by the late capitalism, and argues that the resurgence, the remakes and the remodels of things such as films, fashion and even porn, it highlights that the ever-growing desire for museums and relics and rare memorabilia, and how our shortening attention spans have actually been the result of oversaturation with technical developments such as downloads and YouTube. Nostalgia is obviously, the main theme here as well. So a little quote here from the Cambridge Dictionary. A feeling of pleasure and also slight sadness when you think about things that happened in the past. So in order to understand Vinyl Revival, there is a need to explore the connection to it. And as I said, the most obvious reason is nostalgia. Nostalgia transports individuals to a particular time or a memory. It also has different elements to it, such as legislated nostalgia and borrowed nostalgia, and the lack of subcultures. How genuine, though, is this sentiment of nostalgia, or is it just a very clever and financially successful marketing strategy? So, legislated nostalgia. Owen Hathaway believes that our past is actually being resold to us as a false history. And he looks at the Keep Calm and Carry On posters, which was Tory Britain, wartime ideology, to keep calm and carry on, which is now being used again there with the 7/7 bombings, with the slogan, you have the right not to remain silent. Basically just regurgitating, another notion there, and trying to play on the nostalgic feelings of united Britain as such. Now, this is forcing society to have memories of the past that don't actually exist. And a hauntological structure of feeling is then being created by the connection to the ghosts of futuristic past. And as you can see there, on the right hand side is you have the right not to remain silent, which was a huge driving campaign with the police after the 7/7 bombings, and the original poster next to it, Keep Calm and Carry On. So a sub-theme of this is borrowed nostalgia. Borrowed nostalgia is basically a mirror to a time and place, and also symbolic to a futuristic and fair past. Now, the cultural landscape is a driving force, and Hogarty looks at this, examines this in great detail. What she explains is that there's a new generation unit forming, and each generation creates their own version of structure, and it's fueled by lack of originality and authenticity. One of the factors has been the cultural landscape. So Hogarty discusses the decline of the welfare state through neoliberal policies and how ultimately this has affected the resources available, and this in turn affecting the creativity of artists born post-1980s. So this coincides with Hathaway's stance as well. And again, the lack of authenticity and originality creates the ontological structure of feeling, which in turn then feeds into the nostalgia of a futuristic past. Now that can be seen clearly in the statistics that it's also teenagers that are buying vinyl of bands that they weren't even alive when they were maybe at the top of the charts or whatnot, and you can see that from the official top 10 albums of the 2021 that we discussed earlier as well. So another theme here is cultural connection and artist income. Excuse me. So Hogarty also looks at subcultures, and as I explained earlier, the new generation unit is dominating these post-subcultural times purely because there is a lack of stereotypical subcultures. There's no loyalty to any one specific fashion or genre, and the advancements in technology such as streaming has actually allowed us to cherry pick anything right down to a playlist, whereas before an album you would listen to a full album. Now you can have a playlist with numerous songs from numerous different albums and numerous artists. Now Hogarty also believes that this new generation unit of retro fans has contributed to the rise of the retro culture itself. But why do people still collect vinyl? So vinyl records are tangible. It's a physical product, and it's more likely to be regarded as valuable if it's physical. There's also bonus items. So sometimes albums can include stickers or posters, which are usually too large to fit in a CD case. Back in the 70s, all albums often came with posters, and teenagers had the posters of, Pink Floyd hanging on the wall. So with the resurgence of vinyl records, buyers can once again enjoy that experience. Again, taps into nostalgia as well. The visual appeal. Now, vinyl records pressed in black vinyl aren't particularly interesting, but the record companies are now pressing more coloured vinyl, and even pressing albums as picture discs or maybe clocks or things like that, where the record is made from clear vinyl covering a photo or an image. Also, there's improved sound argument. Now, this has been going on for a while, this argument. Some will argue that they prefer the warm sound of the vinyl records to that of the, harsh, clinical sound of digital downloads or even CDs. So the resurgence of the vinyl records, they're buying again. Some of the titles that were issued like in the 1990s, like as CD-only releases, are now being issued as vinyl records for the first time ever, and they're selling well. There's also attachment to the artists. So whilst most buyers of vinyl records are interested in hearing the music recorded on them, many collectors are just interested in a particular artist. So this type of record collector often wants a copy of every album, every single, album with B-sides, different languages, different covers, different lyrics, anything that relates to that particular artist. If they want to be super fan, then that is what they feel that they need to do. Which also ties into the fetish of vinyl in terms of, the likes of a wall of vinyl. That's a status symbol. It's, something to admire to have. Also need to look at artist income here. So the recent popularity of vinyl sales has helped bands that were cult favourites nearly 3 decades ago sell more records than they did in the 1980s. The revival has given opportunities to claim or reclaim vinyl that was possibly a victim of poor production. Ian Smith is the founder of Glasgow record label Last Night from Glasgow, and he states that many were poorly manufactured or overproduced in the past. So being able to right these wrongs whilst delivering a cherished album is a real joy. He adds that most bands from this period didn't make any money from record sales. They may well have had a nice funded lifestyle for a while, but they didn't see a return from sales. Now, Ken McCluskey, who is in the Bluebells, 80s band The Bluebells, he echoes this by saying a lot of bands use this period, this kind of resurgence, this nostalgic period of payback time to get paid, because they never made any money at the time. They might have got an advance of some sort, but they never got a second advance, and they feel that this is a way of recouping some money. We also need to look at the technology aspect of this. So, George Brick argues that the use of analogue formats seems to be popular, and it also seems to be deep-rooted in nostalgia. It's also slightly anti-establishment, becoming an actual rebellious act itself, going against the grain, going against the trends. Now, the issue is the old ways of production become more a novelty rather than the actual sound itself that's created. So the technology might have given opportunity to reproduce but not actually innovate. This pertains to the notion of no exploding genres in an oversaturated market, which echoes the notion that there's no modern day subcultures, hence the reason for borrowed nostalgia as a form of identity. Also, the rise in sales of turntables alone, again, like the wall of vinyl, it's almost like a status symbol. If you're cool, you've got a turntable, whether you have records or not. Now, we obviously need to look at the marketing aspect of this. Now, nostalgia itself is a product. It's a cultural style and a consumable mode. It's also an antidote to social ageing. It's clear to see that it's the driving force behind any resurgence or revival. It's marketed cleverly with reunion tours, retro festivals such as Party in the Palace, Rewind, etc. You've got Record Store Day, a global event, and also for a short period they're selling vinyl in supermarkets, making it even more easy to access. Then you've also got the likes of anniversary albums, compilations, signed albums, live albums, and live performances such as the coveted tea time slot at festivals such as Glastonbury. In conclusion, the cultural connection, artist income, lack of subcultures, technology advancements and nostalgia, and the marketing of it as a product has all contributed to the vinyl revival. It is an extremely successful marketing strategy used in all sectors of the music industries, and it will continue to be the driving force behind it. Thank you.